Hi, thanks for joining me. So today I want to talk about No Man's Sky, the new update. This is 1.3 Atlas Rises. Now, I've talked about No Man's Sky before. I did a video a while back talking about the overinflated, completely unrealistic expectations of this game around launch. So if you guys are interested in that, you can go back and take a look to hear my thoughts about that. But I heard whispers that this game had some new content and was pretty interesting, and I've been wanting to play a game similar to this. Just pick up something, kind of get back into gaming here a little bit, and this seemed like it would fit the bill. So I popped it in and downloaded the update. It's very big, so expect to have a 6-hour download or something like that. But once it loaded up, I fired it up and wanted to see what this was all about. Now, the first things I was struck by, I would say, are things that were more just different, and not necessarily like I liked better. It was just things that I had kind of had to relearn. For instance, the trading seems somewhat different. Before, you were able to just hang out in a space station. You could go to the docked ships. You could see what sort of items they had, and it seemed like they were pricing things a little bit different than the Galactic Trade Network in that particular star system. So you could do some trading right there between the Galactic Trade and the ships. You could go in between the individual ships. I made some pretty good money that way. It doesn't work quite like that now, but once I sort of got over some of those things, for instance, another thing is like the flying on planets has been changed a bit, so you can actually fly lower to the ground. As far as I can tell, you can actually maybe fly higher into the atmosphere too before you escape the atmosphere. And was that really necessary? Like, you can actually crash into mountains now, which I don't really like. I used to think it was pretty chill. You just get onto the planet, your ship would glide along, and you could mess with your inventory, you could scan and see what stuff was below you. I thought it was just like a much more relaxed, like, enjoyable experience for me. Apparently this is like quote-unquote more exciting, but whatever. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other for the most part. So once I got my feet under me a little bit, as you can do a lot of the same stuff. I mean, pretty much all the same stuff. It's not like a different game. You go around to planets, you go to space stations, you collect resources, you sell stuff, you buy new ships, you scan the animals and plants that are on these planets. It's cool. But there's a lot of small things that were added to this that really come together to create a much more robust whole. I don't want to say that this is like a completely new game, but it's a heck of a lot more fun. And I didn't really start to appreciate that, I don't think, until I started one of the main storylines. They've added a new storyline in addition to the other one. There's kind of the Atlas path, people have played this before. They've also added this other one in, I believe, with this patch. And what's great about it is it starts off and I'm just like, okay, it works kind of like a tutorial. So if you haven't played this game before, and even if you have, it's very useful to do this because it introduces you to a lot of the mechanics in the game, especially that have been added since the game originally came out. So whereas the first couple missions I was like, yeah, okay, this is like, if I didn't know anything about this game already, this would be sort of useful. But then you get into the base building. And my initial impression of the base building was like, huh? I mean, it sounded cool, okay, I guess you can make a base, but like, what's the point of having a base in a game where your goal is to explore the, huge galaxy? But it's not quite like that. The thing with the base is that you can teleport from any space station back to your base. So, say you're 100 million light years away from the planet that you built a base on. You're at a space station, you just hop in the teleporter, teleport back to your base. You can do things that you need to there, and then you can teleport back to the space station. Now, there are missions in this game now. Completely the kind of thing that you'd expect in any other game like this. You go to the space stations, there's somebody there handing out missions. Go scan some flora, go scan some fauna, go kill a pirate, go raid a installation. Go do this, go do that, little fetch quests and things of that nature. But that's cool. You're like, okay, I've got more things that I can do in the game. That adds a little bit of, purpose. Adds a little bit of structure. But then, add in your base. And what you're doing there is really, you're learning a lot of new technology. There are quite a few. It doesn't seem like that many, but there are new resources that have been added as the patches have gone by. So those new resources now, for instance, you might need certain things in order to even collect them. So I'm riding in this ship now. You have vehicles. There's actually 3 kinds of land vehicles, which add a whole other dimension to exploration. Before you'd get in your ship, you'd scan around, you'd go from point to point. If you wanted to just land and explore around, you could explore around on foot. But my range from my ship was maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I wouldn't really want to go too far from my ship. Now, though, you can actually call your ship to you. Let's say you, at least you have some fuel in your launch thrusters. You can be 10 minutes away from your ship, 20 minutes away from your ship. You call your ship over, bang, it shows up. But additionally, you have these vehicles, and so you have sort of within a greater range than maybe you would have on foot. You can explore these planets in different ways. You have a mining laser, for instance, on this particular ship. It's the only way that you can mine this one particular resource. I haven't actually gotten to play around with all the other vehicles. I've only made one of the other ones. I haven't made all 3. But there's a lot kind of more ways to play, and as you unlock technology, and these vehicles also are only sort of like one subset of missions from your base building. You have farming. You sort of do tech stuff. You do like sort of base building missions specifically. You're collecting different weapons and things like that. But as you get all of this technology, you're able to manage your resources in different ways. Now, that feeds into the mission system, where you need some of that tech, or you need some of the resources in order to complete the missions. So that sort of feeds into that loop. And you also have freighters that you can get. So I don't know if you remember in the game previously, you'd be in a star system and all these freighters would warp in. Now that was cool because you could do some like protection, sort of pickup missions when like pirates would be attacking them. I used to really enjoy that. That's another thing that's changed, is combat. And another one of those things where I'm like, I liked it before. Is it better now? But you do have new weapons, which is pretty cool. So I'm adding new weapons to the ships. From what I've heard, the ships handle a little differently, but I'm in a fighter, so it's always kind of handled like a fighter, I feel like. But yeah, so these freighters now. Let's say you have a freighter. You can have more than one starship on it. So this gives you the opportunity to buy new starships. You can fill it up with resources, and the way the economy works now is each of the star systems has their own sort of economy. So it's based on certain things, which might help determine whether or not you want to, like, for instance, sell raw materials, resources there. If you want to refine them and sell, more like alloys and things like that. If you want to like create products from them and sell them in that economy, that might be different. So, knowing those things, you have an economy scanner that can, give you information about this for the various star systems. You can actually warp your freighter now from star system to star system, trade there, and it seems like there's just so many more options for just doing interesting things in the game, and a lot of these things feed into each other. You're able to farm on your base. You can make some of these resources that you need, and even like rare resources when you're collecting them. It's like I always felt like your inventories were kind of limited, even if you had, like, I have 48 inventory slots in my exosuit, but I still felt like, yeah, it's like you can't really just load these things up with a bunch of raw materials, for instance, that you might need for crafting and things like that. It just felt limiting. But with your base, you can make these storage containers. Surprisingly, they don't hold quite as much as you'd think, but it's great because now you go back to your base. You can deposit. All of these resources. It makes it exciting to find rare resources out someplace in the universe, because you can collect them all. You warp back to your base. You can put it in your base, and you've got that stuff if you need it for crafting. If you want to like make a whole bunch of stuff and trade it somewhere else. Um, this game is fun, man. It's really, really cool. Doing the story mission, sort of the new one. Um, it also, there's a part where it's like, well, I kind of want to make sure that you're not going to be able to go back to your base again for a little bit. So just, be advised. And you go off and you do some stuff, and I was like, this is cool. Related to that, I guess specifically, is a new element to the game, which is essentially literally stargates. Um, and that's another thing that's great about this game, is it wears its sci-fi influences on its sleeve, I feel like. You have elements of all kinds of wonderful sci-fi things, Star Trek, Star Wars, just all that kind of stuff. And these Stargates, like, they look just like they're from Stargate, the movie. I never really watched the TV show. They work on runes, and it seems like they also open up a lot of possibilities, again, for getting around the universe, which, it's there's so much more to this game that I think it's really great. Now, my big question was why? Why do this to a game that came out a year ago? And how much more money are you going to make on the game? Is this really worth it to you? And I've heard some different takes on this. My take is that Hello Games was a small studio, and I have no idea. I haven't checked to see how many employees they have right now, but they were an indie game developer, and I feel like with this, I don't know if they're an indie game developer anymore. This feels like the Elder Scrolls. This feels like Fallout 3. This feels like, and again, I think Bethesda, their first party developed games, is a really good analog for what Hello Games is doing here, because Bethesda Games also has small teams, smaller, maybe 40, 50 people working on Elder Scrolls, and they do a lot of things procedurally, and they add a lot of their content in similar ways to what Hello Games is doing now. I have to imagine that Hello Games has probably added staff in order to put out the quality work that they're doing on this game, and this feels like one of those Bethesda games that I really enjoy. So I'd say, especially if you enjoy those types of games, or even if you've played this game before and you enjoyed what you played, but are interested in checking out what new stuff they've done, or if you've never played this game, you really might want to check this out. There's so much more cool stuff to this. I think that it's becoming a much cooler game, and I think it's Hello Games' opportunity to become, if not like a triple A developer, kind of a double A developer, which I think it's got to be a step up for them. I think that they're making money off of Steam, which is something that wasn't necessarily possible, you know, with strictly physical sales. So I hope it's working out. Anyway, those are my impressions of the new No Man's Sky update. I hope you'll join me again for more video game related videos.